Hello everyone, Tripp Harrison here again from Twiford Funeral Homes in Elizabeth City, North Carolina and Manteo, North Carolina on the beautiful Outer Banks. We're here today continuing our video series, When Someone Dies. Today we're going to be talking about children and funerals, or children and death. We're not talking about the death of a child, but about how to involve children in the process of grieving through the funerals and whatnot. So I think it's worth considering a situation where, say, a child's grandmother has died. So what do we tell children when their grandmother dies? If this is the first death that the child has ever experienced, then the parent should be straightforward about it. Explain that death is the end to life in this natural world in our bodies. If your faith believes in an afterlife, which most do, by all means include that in the explanation. But a child must know and understand that grandma's earthly existence is over. And avoid sugarcoating it. A lot of families, in an effort to spare the child from the challenges of dealing with grieving, they sugarcoat it and they'll say something like, Grandma has just fallen asleep, or she's not going to wake up, or she's gone away to some other place. And younger children especially are very literal, and they may interpret that sort of comment as literally, well, where did she go? Well, let's go see her, things like that. So it's important that we deal with the reality of physical death. How you explain spiritual life after death is a matter of your personal faith, and we encourage you to consult with your pastor or a religious leader about that. We're strictly talking about the logistics of the actual physical death. And physical death is physical death, and it means the end of life as we know it here on earth. So you may want to explain to your child that grandma was more than a physical body and talk about the spiritual aspects, but that what we're dealing with in the funeral services are, and what they'll see and possibly touch and what have you, is not the entirety of grandma, but it is her physical body, which is no longer alive. So a critical factor is the age of your child. Younger kids do not understand metaphor or allegory, and they take everything very, very literally. So straightforward facts are best. I've heard stories of children who were told that their lost loved one was just asleep and they weren't going to wake up. And then they would have problems down the road with that child not wanting to go to sleep for fear that that would be their fate. What about funerals? Should funerals be attended by children? Well, in my opinion, yes. I believe that children need to be introduced to mortality in the real world. And it's a great time for children to face the fact that they will never see or talk with this person again in this life. It's also an opportunity for the children to learn about the experience and the emotion of grief. Grieving is something that we all do, usually several times in our life. And grieving is something that they can see others do and understand the process. It's perfectly all right for a child to see their parent cry at the loss of their parents. So in this example of grandma passing away, if mom or dad are crying and upset, there's no reason to hide that from the children, but let them understand it's okay to grieve and it's okay to miss that loved one that's no longer there. So we're going to look at some age brackets specifically and how to deal with the understanding of death based on those age brackets. And some of this material I got from an excellent article I read in Fatherly Magazine by Lauren Steele. And I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but these are some of the things that she mentioned. Ages 3 to 5, they perceive death as temporary and reversible and impersonal. This is the proverbial age of the goldfish dies and you pour it down the toilet and 5 minutes later they want a puppy. So that's the sort of understanding level at that age. But when they get to the ages of 5 and 9, most children begin to understand that all living things will eventually die and that death is final. And they tend to not relate it to themselves or consider the idea that they can escape it. They may associate death with images like skeletons and skulls, and some of them have nightmares. And this is the age when they might see scary movies, and they start to deal with that more gruesome side of death. And then age 9 through adolescence, older children begin to understand that completely that death is not reversible and that we will all die someday, including them. So removing emotion can also be helpful to children, or for us to in communicating with children. If we can communicate our feelings and beliefs about death to them in non-emotional terms, it may work a little better. Removing emotion can actually be helpful when talking to kids about death. For a large part of childhood, death isn't necessarily viewed in emotional terms. We can give examples of dead things in life, dead flowers, dead birds, dead insects, those sorts of things. And the interesting thing that the National Institute of Health has determined that a child's interest in and distant exposure to death may provide an exposure for the first time that all living things die and make room for new living things. So it's a great example to use something less close to home, like a dead insect or a dead flower or a dead bird, what have you, to help them understand the circle of life concept, rather than starting out with something like grandma. So it might be a great place to introduce that. Overall, some simple rules. Number 1, explain what death is, that everything lives, and that everything eventually dies. Be honest and literal when someone dies. If they press for details, like what happened or what they look like or whatever, keep it simple, not too graphic. Help the concept of death sink in without the gory, uncomfortable side, especially as children. Don't use metaphorical phrases like grandma's gone to another place or went to sleep. Have kids use their energy. This is number 4, remembering fond or funny memories. Talk about the funny things that grandma used to do and some of the things that she used to say. And here's a great idea on number 5, is having younger kids channel their emotions through drawing pictures or singing a song, especially drawing pictures. Kids love to draw, and it's a great chance for them to express their grief with their creative right brain and to draw pictures of some of the experiences they associate with grandma. At the funeral, a few quick notes. What about babies at funerals? Well, babies obviously do not typically have the wherewithal to understand what's going on. Some find it important to personally bring a baby to a funeral, and I suggest if you do that you bring or assign a baby buddy, somebody that can be there to that can become the primary caretaker when the mother is grieving herself or she's greeting guests or whatnot. So toddlers, again, a helper might be a great relief for the child's parents, but it might also be important for the little one to take in the experience a little bit and begin to understand a little bit about how mortality works and that we do have a limited amount of life. So how much they understand what's going on will vary, but if they're properly prepared by their parents ahead of time, they may understand a little more of what's going on. Older children who have a better understanding of what has happened may emulate the mourning behavior of others. What we don't want to do is comfort by denial, by saying, well, everything's going to be okay and everything will be back to normal and all that sort of thing, because it won't. That lost loved one has a footprint in our lives that will forever not be there. So it's important to acknowledge the reality and the truth of it without sugarcoating it too much, with being very upfront with it. Should children view the body? Well, there are varying opinions on this subject, but my feeling in general is yes, provided the body is viewable and was not disfigured or in some way become not comfortable to view for anyone. Here are the conditions, though, I believe that are important. An adult should explain to a child what they will see if they choose to see grandma. They should know he'll be lying down in a long box with a lid on it, with his hands crossed and his eyes closed, that he'll be dressed a certain way, and he will not move and not open his eyes. This helps them to know ahead of time what to prepare for, so it's not a shock. The child can speak to grandma, but grandma can't talk back. If the child wants to touch grandma, they should be allowed to do so, in my opinion, if they're prepared to know what that's going to be like. And again, the preparation for that talk is explaining that the decedent's hands and face will be cold to the touch, things you should just talk about. Many experts suggest the child be encouraged to bring some small item that has personal meaning to them to put in the casket with their loved one. A child sometimes will bring a teddy bear or a baseball card, or they might draw up a picture and place that in the casket so that it will be with grandpa or grandma's body. That's a great idea for them to express their grief by drawing and then to give it as a gift at the service. One final thought: once the attending of the funeral has been decided, and the options of seeing and touching and perhaps even kissing the body are thoroughly explained to the child must decide whether that's something they want to do. It should never be forced. It should never be guilt-tripped into it. It should be a decision that they make with their own mind, and whatever that decision is, the parent should honor it. Forcing anything either way in this situation is, I'm sure everyone in the psychology field would agree, is not a good idea. We don't want to create scars that child will deal with for the rest of their life. So, a surprising number of children do want to touch and do want to be there and to see, if for no other reason than curiosity satisfaction. They wonder what that's like, and it's just part of the process of growing up. For further information on this, consult your local pastor of your church, or if you choose to see a counselor in your area, if there's been a loss in your family, that's not a bad idea either. Well, on behalf of Twiford Funeral Homes in Manteo, North Carolina and Elizabeth City, this is Tripp Harrison. I hope you have a great day. Please like and subscribe to our channel to help us grow, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks a lot.